This episode is brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry. Pepsi Wild Cherry is bursting with delicious cherry flavor and a sweet, crisp taste that gives you more to go wild for. Getting wild may look different these days, but whether it's opting for a solo Friday binge watch or a big night out, everyone can indulge in their wild side with Pepsi Wild Cherry. Also available in Zero Sugar. So grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Introducing Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Icon of the Seas, the ultimate family vacation. The ultimate 6 slides, 8 neighborhoods, 0 compromise vacation. The ultimate never done that, can't wait to do it vacation. The ultimate chillin' by a different pool every day of the week vacation. This is the Icon of Vacations. Icon of the Seas, arriving in 2024. Book today. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 521. Did I get that right? Is it 521? Is that the episode we're on? I think so. I'm not even sure. Something like that. Some really large number. Episode
521, it turns out. You are correct.
521? Yeah, that's what I had on the brain. So, episode 521 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. I am Jason Evans for your listening pleasure. It is early in the morning, slightly before 9 a.m. on Sunday. I am joined by Donald Wine and Sam Klein. Gentlemen, how are you feeling today? Donald, why don't you tell me how you feel first?
Good. It's Sunday. We have it's been a nice weekend so far. Let's keep it going. We got some little Duke news we get to talk about today.
Lots of little Duke news. Sam, how about you? What's going on in your neighborhood?
I'm great. I'm wearing my brand new home field apparel Duke Blue Devils t-shirt, ringer t-shirt. I think it's pretty sharp. Feel great about that. I went to see Dead & Company last night at Fenway Park, so I'm tired, but it was a good time. So what do you want to talk about? Basketball?
Wait, Sam, how can people get the home field shirt that you're wearing?
How can people get the home field shirt that they're wearing? Well, what they should do is go to homefield.com. Oh, shoot. Now I forget. We do have a code there, right?
We got a code.
We do have a code, yes. DBR Podcast. DBR Podcast. If you go to homefieldapparel.com and use the code DBR Podcast, not only will you save 15% on anything you buy there, and it doesn't have to be just Duke gear. If you went to another school, you can get that stuff too. 15% off, and it helps support the show. So go to homefieldapparel.com, 15% off, and you can get the coolest gear and wear it on the show like Sam is doing right now for the listeners
like
to not be able to see.
You could look just like me.
They do have,
just like Sam.
They do have pretty cool looking like classic stuff, which I was surprised when I looked. I was like, this is so much fun.
Vincent was the one of us that was not familiar with home field before we scored this connection.
Yes. Yeah. No,
he hasn't been.
I was familiar.
That's right. So Donald and I were aware of this brand and were probably regularly refreshing to see when they would finally get Duke University stores on board.
Yes.
Notoriously difficult to work with Duke University stores.
So again, use that code DBR Podcast. And even though we're saying it because we get a little tiny sliver, really the reason to use it is to get yourself 15% off. Anyway.
Right. Exactly.
We get no juice from Ebbetsfield flannel, but I'd tell you to go buy all the new Duke hats they just released because I'm hyped about that too.
Exactly. All right, guys. Before we get to our topics, we got a whole slew. We got a little list we've been keeping for the past several days of little snippets of Duke news that we're going to get to. Before we get to those, gentlemen, I've got a real dilemma. I don't know what I'm going to do about this. So my wife and I have really been looking forward to. We really want to take a trip to Japan. That's like sort of we got a couple. We had a big trip to Israel and Jordan just a couple months ago. We're going to Iceland and Norway in August, and next spring we wanted to go to Japan. My wife has been dying to do this for a long time. Duke University has one of the Duke University tours, one of the Duke University trips going to Japan, and I checked the itinerary, I checked the pricing, everything about it, I'm like, this is perfect. And I love it because usually I do all the planning. And the cool thing is when you do one of these tours through a school, like through Duke, the planning's all taken care of. You cut them a check and you're done, which is great. I think you can probably sense what the problem
You said
is.
it was in the
April,
spring, yes, Jason?
First week in April?
So the trip dates are March 25th to April 6th. This would be right after the second round of the NCAA tournament, the round of 32. You would leave the next day. You would miss the Sweet 16 and the grade 8, and you would miss the Final Four as well. I think maybe you'd be back in time for the national championship game. I haven't figured it all quite out yet. Sort of maybe it depends on your flight or something like that. Guys, what am I going to do here? Like my wife is like, this is the perfect trip. It is the worst time it can possibly be.
Okay, so I'm here to tell you, first of all, the Duke alumni like trips that they do are amazing. I took one to China.
I went to China.
I went to China in 2011. It was fantastic how they put together and have no qualms about the actual trip being amazing. Having said that, I will tell you also, Jason, where have I been the last 3 or 4 years during the NCAA tournament? I've been on soccer trips out of the country because that is when FIFA decides to schedule a window. So I'm here to tell you, as long as you can jump on from Kyoto or wherever you're going to go from the Tokyo Dome, if you can jump on and watch the game, you can watch the game. I watched the game while watching the US-Mexico game in Azteca. So I know you can watch it in the Tokyo Dome. They got better Wi-Fi there than they do at Azteca. So, Jason, if you and the missus want to take it, I'm here for
it. So let me tell you the set of considerations. One, please. It sounds like Donald has answered my first question, which was like, how worth it is this trip specifically? Like, I know you get to avoid the planning, whatever, but like, make sure you're going on the trip that you want to go on. I would imagine that like going to Japan and then feeling like you didn't see one or two of the things that you wanted to see would feel like a waste because it is rather far away. So it sounds like this really is a great trip. You do like the setup of like going with a big group of people. On the topic of a big group of people,
well, it's not. By the way, it's not that big.
How
like
big?
The Duke trips are limited to 24, which is kind of great.
So 24 people who are all Duke alumni or Duke alumni adjacent, which means you won't be the only person on this trip who is interested in watching basketball games.
Yep.
I imagine, I don't know if they'll have like a dedicated, thing for that, but you will find some camaraderie among that group that also is like, how do I watch these games? The other consideration, you said that you're going to miss the second weekend and then the last weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I believe those are yes.
Now, the times, given that it's Japan, the times for these games are pretty horrible. Like, the timing is going to be pretty horrible because most of these games are played, like Duke tends to play in the second round. Duke tends to get like the early slot where they're like alone on national TV for the Sweet 16. And so that game may be like at 3 a.m, at 4 a.m, like at the worst possible time. So it is very possible that you are going to miss, assuming that Duke is playing in these rounds of this tournament, you are going to not be able to watch the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 live.
So I think, first of all, Jason, you said it goes through April 6th, which would be the Final Four night. So when you fly back, remember, you're going to be the next day. So you actually could fly back on the 6th and land wherever the Final Four is. I believe it's in Glendale,
so Arizona.
You could land there on the 6th and still be able to get to the game. So I'm just letting you know that that's possible. Also, with it being 13 hours difference, if we're playing the Sweet 16 Elite 8, we're starting at like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. And even if we have the late game, right, 10 p.m. on the East Coast, you will actually be okay because it'll be 10 a.m., 11 a.m. So you guys will be waking up in the morning, having breakfast, and watching the game.
Or you'll be out doing some activity that you.
That's my bigger concern, right? So we'll be at the Shinto temple. We'll be climbing Mount Fuji as Duke is playing Kansas in the grade 8. Something like that.
Jason, I'm here to tell you that Mount Fuji will be there after the game. You guys are a group of Dukies. If you go on this trip, I have confidence that you guys will figure it out.
Can I offer a completely alternative take, Donald?
Yes.
Jason, you've seen Duke win a national championship. You've seen Duke play in every round of the tournament on television and in person all over the country. You have never been to Japan. It is true. I know that this is what we do here, but talking about Duke basketball and obsessing over Duke basketball, my guy, it's okay. Everything will be fine.
We look forward to adding Mount Fuji to the list of places that this podcast has been recorded from.
So, that's right.
I'm not sure how great the Wi-Fi is on Mount Fuji.
You're about to find out. You're going to be there. You're going to be there.
It's a very technologically advanced society.
They
have Wi-Fi. Yes. All right,
Jason. Part of this confidence is that we have the confidence that this will be a problem for you. Like, if this is a problem for you, this is a good problem to have. Just me watching the game in Azteca, I was like, man, I really wish that this becomes an issue for me. And it was. That's perfect. That means we're still playing basketball at that point.
Right. Exactly. And boy, you want to talk about first world problems. Oh no, I'm on a trip to Japan and my basketball team is playing in the Final Four. Oh, woe is me.
Smash that coupon
and
code
you get
for
home
field.
So.
Smash the coupon code for home field so that Jason can afford to go on this trip.
DBR podcast.
DBR podcast.
All right, guys, we've dallied around with silliness long enough. Let's get to the stuff that matters. We want to recap. First of all, we're going to do the NBA draft. Dereck Lively ends up going number 12 to Dallas. There was a little trade there with the Oklahoma City Thunder. A lot of people thought Lively might go number 10 to Dallas. Dallas and OKC traded their picks, and Dallas wanted Lively all along. There's a little question about that. So Lively goes 12 to Dallas. Dariq Whitehead, who, look, the honest truth is there was a chance he might not go in the first round. Looked like he probably would, but there was a chance. You know, he's a late first rounders. Things can happen, and guys slip. You never know. But I think came out really, really well for Dariq Whitehead. He goes number 22 to the Brooklyn Nets. So let's talk about both of those first. Sam, I'll come to you. I went to Donald first on the question of where Jason should watch the Final Four next year on a plane. Sam, either Lively or Whitehead, take it. What's your feeling on how the draft ended up for the Dukies?
Seen a lot of conversation about what a great fit this is for Lively in particular because of his getting to play now alongside Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic, who attracts a ton of attention on offense and who gets other guys open. And we know that when Dereck Lively is left open a little bit, that he tends to get buckets. The other thing that I'm sort of not worried about when it comes to Dereck Lively in the pros, sort of regardless of what team he's on, is that he is going to bring value on defense. I don't know if at his pick level he's going to play 25 minutes a game next year, or if I'm not going to pretend that I know enough about the Mavs roster to tell you Dereck Lively's definitely playing 25 minutes next year. He's definitely playing 30 minutes.
Wait, I'll jump in and I'll tell you that this is a team, the Dallas Mavericks is a team that they do not have, their big men are not good. This is a team that is dominant in the backcourt, and they're apparently letting Christian Wood go. He was someone who played some for them at center. I'm not saying that Lively is an automatic starter from day one, but
the chance.
There's certainly a chance. The Mavs want to get better on defense, and they desperately need a presence in the middle, especially a rim protecting presence. That's why Lively was such a no-brainer pick for them.
And they got that, right? We talked about how Lively has clear value in the NBA as a shot blocker and as a dunker. He clearly has things that he's working on. They Duke men's basketball put out a clip of, they put out a lot of content this week about the draft, but John Shire was saying something to the effect of Derek's got a great shot and he's really developing it. I don't know if that's true, but it's nice that his college coach has confidence in him. But you could see that could be coming along for Lively. So clear things that he's already ready for in the NBA. Doesn't foul that much. At least he didn't foul very much in college, even as he was blocking all those shots. You hope that translates as well. It tends to get easier in the NBA when it comes to getting fouls called. So even as a young, inexperienced player, not worried about Dereck Lively being expected to play a lot of minutes and then fouling out of games. So I think it seems like a nice fit. Dallas, generally speaking, is a pretty solid organization, and I like that for Dereck Lively.
And the great thing about Dereck Lively going there is that even if his shot isn't coming along, but we've seen, videos, we talked about the videos that has been put out about him working on his 3-point jump shot. He doesn't have to be ready to shoot a 3-pointer in September, October, because they have plenty of guys there who can shoot the long ball. His job is going to be mainly to hold it down on the inside while Luka Doncic and they hope Kyrie Irving are there in the perimeter to do damage out there. So I really like this move for him, and also for Dariq Whitehead, since I know you guys talk about Lively a lot. Dariq Whitehead is in a situation where the Brooklyn Nets, they might be in a rebuilding phase, and this might be something where they're saying, hey, we want you to be one of the pieces, the big cornerstones of this rebuild. And again, it's a situation where I know Brooklyn's in a win now type of city, but they are in a position where he can come along slowly and make sure that he's 100% healthy from all the injuries he had this past year and the surgery he just had in the spring. So I like both moves for both guys. I think they're in perfect situations for them to start their career, and they're in perfect organizations that are going to help bring them along in the ways that they need to, so that when they hit the floor, they don't feel like they're being thrown to the wolves. They are in a position where they can be successful. And that's what we as Duke fans want for them.
Look, when it comes to Whitehead, I think it's somewhat of the exact opposite situation with Lively, where when you look at the Dallas Mavericks roster, they really don't have any big men. They don't have any center that would be in Lively's way. On the other hand, with the Brooklyn Nets, you're talking about a team that is loaded with shooting guards, with wing players. And look, I'm not saying that Whitehead is not in their plans, not by a long stretch, but my bet is Whitehead's going to spend a pretty fair bit of the season, especially early in the year, in the G League, that they will want to get him minutes and get him time, especially because he didn't get as much time as he would have wanted due to injuries at Duke. And I think they're going to, I just don't think this is a team that necessarily needs him right away. They've got Mikal Bridges, they've got Joe Harris, they've got Seth Curry, they've got Cam Thomas, they've got Cameron Johnson. This is this is a Nets team that really has a lot of guys playing already on the wing. And I'm not sure, we've talked about Whitehead's potential and how this is a guy who many people thought was a top 5 draft pick at one point. So clearly, if things develop, he's going to be in great shape and will be a huge player for the Nets. But I think that may be a process rather than something that happens fairly quickly.
It's going to be a process, but that logjam that you just mentioned at the guard position, I think that's going to be alleviated somewhat in the offseason. I know there's been talk about Mikal Bridges going elsewhere via trade. I know there's talk about Cam Johnson going elsewhere via trade because, again, if they're going to start this rebuild, those are kind of two of the biggest pieces, or at least the guys with the highest trade value that they have on the roster, and then also would alleviate some of the logjam that they do have. So I would expect some of those names you mentioned, Jason, to kind of clear out this summer, and that may give Whitehead more opportunity. Again, I agree with you. I think he's going to be brought along slowly, especially considering the injury that the injuries that he had this past season. Really being in the point where if they're going to do a rebuild, it's about bringing guys on slowly and finding some of these other pieces that are going to complement Whitehead and some of the others that they consider part of the long-term future of the Nets.
Hey guys, I just want to do a couple other quick NBA draft notes, just a few things that I, jotted down as I was thinking about the NBA draft. Duke was the only ACC school to produce a first-round draft pick. There has been much talk on this podcast and elsewhere about the state of the ACC. And look, I don't know if it's good that the ACC, obviously Duke had 2 first-round draft picks in the ACC, rest of the ACC, every other team in the ACC, 14 of them had 0. I don't know if that's good because you could say, oh, potential ACC draft picks didn't turn pro, or more accurately, the ACC really had no one other than these guys at Duke who were anywhere close to being first-round draft picks. It's troublesome, I think, for the conference that they aren't doing better in the NBA draft. The first non-Duke ACC draft pick was Hunter Tyson of Clemson. A year ago, I would have thought that was absolutely insane. But the NBA sees a lot of what it likes in Hunter Tyson. He ended up going to Denver, and he plays the same position as Jack White. I'm not sure if anyone bothered to think about this, but that could impact whether Jack White gets another two-way contract from the Denver Nuggets. It could be a significant thing for Duke Jack White. The other ACC guys who got drafted, Jordan Miller of Miami went at number 48. Isaiah Wong went 55. Here's another head scratcher. If anyone had told you a year ago that Jordan Miller was going to go higher in the draft than Isaiah Wong, you would have been like, what the heck's going on in Miami?
And that Isaiah Wong would go that low.
Yeah.
I mean, he was pegged to be a late first round, pick last year. But I do think both those guys will end up, getting out some nice careers. Bruce Brown is a guy I think of. He also went to Miami, and a guy who was like, oh, this guy should have been much better than he is. But now it's, world champion Bruce Brown, because he's on the Denver Nuggets. He's found his way around the league and ended up in the right situation.
Bruce Brown's about to get paid, by the way. He's a free agent. Yeah. He had a great playoffs. He's about to get paid. The other little draft note I wanted to mention very quickly. So G.G. Jackson went number 45. This is a guy who was formerly the number one player in the 2023 class. He reclassified to the class of 2022. He then chose not to go to North Carolina, went to South Carolina instead. I'm not sure anyone saw him play at South Carolina because South Carolina is just not an interesting basketball program. And then he ends up going number 45 in the draft. I mean, like literally a year ago, before he reclassified, everyone thought this was a guy who was going to be easily a top 10 draft pick. So he dropped pretty significantly. And then Donald, I'm sure you want to mention it. Imani Bates went number 49. By the way, his story and G.G. Jackson's story are almost exactly the same.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. Yeah. And I think for Imani Bates, I forgot where he went. He said he went 49th, but I forgot which team he went to. I'm sure you'll tell me in just a second. But I think for Imani Bates, his story is just a matter of you need to have the right people in your corner, and you need to have people who are going to understand what is best for you. May not necessarily be the best thing for them. And I think for Imani Bates and some of these other guys too, I'm not going to speak for G.G. Jackson because I don't know his situation, but at least for Imani's, there's a lot of people who were trying to get stuff out of Imani Bates, except for what was best for Imani Bates. And it puts him in a situation where he goes to Memphis, doesn't do well, transfers back home to Eastern Michigan, gets caught up in the incident with the gun that I think the charge of later dropped. But again, you're putting someone in a situation that they know they can't handle. And because of that, came back with a lot of pressure to perform at Eastern Michigan, did well, but he didn't do anything near what he was expected to do when he was number one or number two, depending on your draft service, alongside Chet Holmgren. So it's a poor situation. It's funny, Jason, we talk about these rookies. Chet Holmgren is going to be a rookie because he missed all of last year. So add that guy to the mix of these guys who are, running for rookie of the year and stuff like that. But to now the comparisons for Imani Bates are still going to be there because once again, he's in a draft class alongside the guy who he's been battling his whole high school career.
By the way, on a future podcast, we're not going to do it on this one, but we've already started to get some 2024 mock drafts coming through. Duke well represented in the 2024 mock draft so far. Well,
everyone's staying, so that's fine, Jason. They can mock all they want.
Jason says we're not covering this yet, that the things are already coming in. It was Jason who started the 2024 draft discussion topic on the DVR forum yesterday. So don't accuse other people of getting in here way too early, Jason. This is your thing.
Hey, I freely admit it. It's more that we have so many other topics to go through on this episode that we don't have time to do the 2024 mock draft thing. Hey, really quickly, before we take a break, I do want to mention one other bit of NBA news that relates to a beloved Dookie, Tyus Jones on the move. This happened just before the NBA draft. He is part of a 3-team trade. He went to Washington as part of the trade that sent Marcus Smart from Boston to Memphis. There were several other players involved in this trade, but really the biggest names are Marcus Smart, Kristaps Porzingis, who goes to Boston, and Tyus Jones, who goes to Washington. Tyus gets to be a starting point guard. The word was that Tyus kind of wanted out of Memphis because he wanted to be able to run his own team, which is really interesting because when he signed with Memphis, he signed a 2-year deal with Memphis, almost exactly a year ago. And the presumption was that, he's very happy being the backup to Ja Morant. And then I was sort of intrigued by this news that, Tyus wanted to be dealt. He wants to go someplace where he could be a starter. And he gets to do that now in Washington. By the way, he only has 1 year left on his contract. He's getting paid $14 million this year. So, if you're worried about Tyus going from a contender in Memphis to a also ran in Washington, he's getting paid $14 million.
Hey, Tyus, welcome to DC, buddy. We have a whole 13,000 strong Duke DC alumni waiting to watch you at your game. So reach out, dbrpodcast@gmail.com.
Can I comment on a few of the oddities of this trade?
Sure.
Sure. So Jason, to your discussion about Tyus Jones and wanting to be a starter, the other thing here is that, who knows when Ja Morant is going to be cleared according to polite society.
25 games is when he's going to, yeah.
So Tyus Jones was going to be starting those games, and then who says that between now and 25 games into the season that Ja Morant wouldn't do some other stupid thing that might prevent him from coming back on the court? He's sort of developed a history for being a little bit of a fool. So I don't know that Memphis was the worst place. I do remember, Jason, a couple of years ago when Tyus Jones was getting himself into that situation, that we were like, weird setup for him. But what I've always perceived about Tyus Jones and about his brother as well is that they seem to be very clear about what their place is in the NBA. I don't think that Tyus Jones sort of was definitely I'm a starting point guard in the NBA on a team that is worth watching level of talent. And I think that perception has changed over the last couple of years, and that now he is in that position. I will say the bummer for him is that he goes to one of the worst franchises. I mean, the franchise,
and they're going to be tanking. They're absolutely tanking. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Wizards are tanking. I saw a great tweet because there's also some Wizards ownership group changes going on. Saw a great tweet that the Wizards are on track to compete to win 45 games in the 2035 season. So that's a tough look for the guys. So on the one hand, I love that Tyus Jones is playing for my old hometown team and that Donald's going to get to see him. On the other hand, man, that is the kiss of death to be playing in Washington for that franchise. It's just, they just stink all the time. And they told Bradley Beal that they were going to build a winner or a contender around him, and they dumped him off. So that didn't work. And so, yes, I'm rooting for Tyus Jones. Quite frankly, speaking with my Duke hat on or with my Duke home field apparel shirt on, I hope Tyus Jones is only in Washington for one season, because that's a tough place to develop your NBA career. And I'm very curious, not that we need to get into it here, but how Kristaps Porzingis is going to fit on the Celtics.
I was going to say the Dukie who probably is going to get the biggest leap in name recognition next year, Trey Jones. Why? Because he happens to play in the San Antonio Spurs, where one of the greatest prospects that has ever come into the NBA draft is going. They're going to be on national TV a billion times next year. Everyone's going to know who Trey Jones is. We already knew, but everyone else is too.
I'm used to, when I watch the draft, I'm used to the players being a lot taller than the commissioner. That's totally fine and normal. But I saw the picture of all the lottery picks standing next to each other, and Wembanyama's in his own row.
Yeah,
I love that. That guy is tremendous.
He looked tall standing next to Dereck Lively, and Dereck Lively's 7'1".
Yes,
he was sitting down, and he was a foot. They usually angle the set of any set where everyone is relatively the same height, so they are talking to each other. They couldn't do that for him. His chair was at the lowest setting, and he was still a foot taller than everyone else on the ESPN set. It's the most massive, tall person I've ever seen.
He's listed at what, 7'5", 7'6"?
Well, he's listed at 7'2", and he's really 7'5".
Hold on. Here's the deal. He did not attend the NBA draft combine, so there is no official NBA height on him. The last time he was measured or something like that, I believe he was 7'2" or 7'3".
He was 7'2".
Yeah,
he's clearly taller than that.
Yes. Everyone says he's clearly taller than that.
Is it that all the rulers that go that high don't translate to metric? Is that the problem? Right. Like he has a centimeter reading, we just can't compute it into inches.
No, but there is a point in the preseason when the San Antonio Spurs will have to officially measure him and submit an official height without shoes to the NBA. And that will be a big, I suggest that ESPN televise that moment because it's a big deal.
Like they do weigh-ins for boxing.
Yeah, like a weigh-in. Yeah.
I remember watching George Mirasan. Now I was a child. You all probably remember George Mirasan better than I do. But yes. I remember watching George Mirasan and thinking the same thing. Like this person among a group of absurdly large humans, this person is absurdly large relative to these other people. So
I have sat on a plane right behind George Mirasan. Let me tell you, that is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Him getting onto a plane. That's all I'll say about George Mirasan.
Hey guys, I do want to note one last quick thing about Tyus Jones. He did just have far and away his best season in the NBA last year for the Memphis Grizzlies. So if he sort of changed his mind about, okay, I'm comfortable being a backup versus I think I'm good enough to be a starter, it's understandable. And the other thing I wanted to note about him is he may not be in Washington all of next year. He's on an expiring contract. It is highly possible, I think, because Washington, as we mentioned, is in, tank mode, get as many first-round draft picks as we can kind of mode. I think it is very possible that at some point during the season next year, they look to deal, if Tyus is having a good season, as many people expect him to, that they might look to deal him to a contender. And again, with a expiring contract, Tyus then gets to decide next off season where he wants to play basketball because, he'll be an unrestricted free agent.
Get him out of Washington. Save Tyus Jones.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back from the break, Jon Scheyer needs help. Help wanted in Durham. Assistant coaches needed. That story in a moment.
Let me give you a big Labor Day surprise. Most people think if we all exercise the same and eat the same, we'd all look the same. And let me tell you why that's wrong. Your body is unique and your metabolism is unique. I'm Lacey Green and I'm a super trainer at Body. That's BODI.com. And you can't see me, but I don't look like your average personal trainer. I'm curvy and I'm proud of it. So I created a program for beginners only on the Body app to show people like us how to get incredible results and be our version of happy and healthy. This isn't just workout videos. It's people like you and me. It's community. It's incredible trainers. It's easy to follow nutrition and mindset experts to help you reduce stress and just feel better. And you can get started with my new program called For Beginners Only. Now, here's the big surprise. If you go to body.com right now, that's BODI.com, not only can you get everything Body has to offer at 50% off with an annual membership, you'll also get an additional 20% off, but only during Labor Day weekend. Let's do this together. Go to body.com. That's body with an I.com.
All right, we are back from the break, and we've only got two more topics. We've been hitting a bunch of different topics. We've got two more topics to hit on this edition of the podcast. The first one is this. We are weeping. We are so sad to hear that Amile Jefferson will be leaving Durham. He is no longer going to be an assistant for the Duke Blue Devils because he's going to become an assistant for the Boston Celtics. He's going up to the NBA. The Celtics must have really liked Amile Jefferson because the theory was that the Celtics wanted to surround their head coach, Joe Mazzulla, who's only been on the job for 1 year and was sort of thrust into the job at the very last minute. The theory was that they wanted to surround Joe Mazzulla with very experienced assistant coaches who could help Joe Mazzulla's only been an NBA assistant coach for 2 or 3 years. And then, again, this Celtics job through a confluence of weird events ended up going to him. So to me, it's a big deal that the Boston Celtics, who were looking for as experienced assistants as they could find, took Amile Jefferson, who has 1 year of college basketball assistant coaching under his belt. Now, obviously, the Celtics know Duke players, and they know Amile Jefferson. Steve Pagliuca, one of the owners of the Celtics, is someone who is very familiar with the Duke basketball program. And then there's that guy Jason Tatum, who his 1 year in college basketball was played underneath the tutelage of Captain Amile Jefferson. Amile was the captain, of course, of that 2017 team that Tatum was a part of. But I just think it's really interesting that Amile's moving up to the NBA. Sam, anything on this?
Yeah, two things. Amile Jefferson, welcome to Boston. I don't know if our alumni club is quite as strong as the one that Tyus Jones gets to enjoy in DC. But
Sam, isn't it pronounced Boston?
Sorry, Boston. Excuse me. Amile Jefferson, welcome to Boston. We are so excited to have you as part of the Celtics organization.
Much better. That's much better. I want to hear you do the entire podcast in a Boston accent, please.
Do you want me to do that? I'm looking at the Celtics roster, and I think as of now there are only 3 players who are older than Amile Jefferson, because he just turned 30. I can't do this.
It's really good, out. Man. You were killing it.
Tapping out. Amile Jefferson is 30 years old, so as you said, Jason, he's relatively inexperienced, not just in coaching but in life. He's just not that old of a gentleman. But what we've always said about Amile Jefferson is that he is like the consummate leader. He was a captain at Duke for what it seemed like forever, because he had an injury season that kept him in the program for an extra year to play with Jason Tatum, which I think was a great benefit to Tatum and to Jefferson and to the team that year. And it does sound like the relationship that he has with Tatum was a big driver for why the Celtics were interested in this in the first place. Of course, in the NBA, you don't have the kinds of assistant coach numbers restrictions that you do in college. So if Amile is only spending time with like 2 or 3 Celtics players, then he is more than worth his spot on the bench. And I think it's also a cool thing that, during the Coach K era, Duke had a number of assistant coaches who stayed for a long time and then went and became head coaches at other places. Johnny Dawkins, Steve Wojciechowski, Chris Collins, Jeff Capel. They didn't really have anybody that went and did anything else. And so I think that in pursuit of Duke likes being, everywhere in the NBA, I think it's great that there are Duke coaches that are leaving the Duke bench to go get this opportunity. The other thing I would imagine that Amile Jefferson is saying is like, look, I didn't get that much of an NBA experience. I think he was bouncing around for like 2 or 3 years in the professional ranks and then came back to coaching. And this is a way for him to sort of continue that journey. And I get the impression, again, sort of going back to Amile's attitude and the type of player that he was on the court, I imagine that NBA teams were saying to themselves, God, I wish we could just have Amile Jefferson in the locker room and in practice and not have to spend a roster spot on him, because frankly, he's a 6'8", non-shooting, high energy power forward, which just isn't a thing in the NBA anymore. So I am sure that a program like the Celtics, or a franchise like the Celtics that is generally considered pretty well run, is the fact that Amile is getting an opportunity there, I think speaks volumes about his potential as a coach. And maybe this means that he doesn't become a college head coach someday. Maybe it means he becomes an NBA head coach someday, and that would be pretty cool too.
This is just the player to be named later in the trade between Boston and Duke's coaching staffs. Remember a couple years ago, Carol Lawson down there. And so a couple years later, they come for Amile Jefferson. First of all, I think it's a great move for Amile. Again, like you guys said, so young in his career. And also just after 1 year, he clearly made an impression on a lot of people with his ability to develop players or even just to relate to players and work with them, being able to have that kind of impact in just a year. And I think a year before that, he was the player development operations person that didn't get to recruit, but he has been able to do that to jump to the league. I think that's amazing. We are going to miss his intensity for sure. That's the one thing that we're going to miss in Durham, is that his intensity was something that players talked about, and especially with regards to practice, and him letting them know there is a style of Duke play that needs to be had. There's a style of Duke mentality that needs to be had, and that you will have it as long as Amile Jefferson is on your bench. I think, for Boston, it's great that they came and got that, but for us it is a sad day because we lose that intensity and just that guy in the locker room who everyone, I mean, I don't know any person who has ever put on a Duke blue shirt that does not love Amile Jefferson. So he will be sorely missed in Durham.
Yeah, and let's get to the impact of this on the Duke coaching staff. Obviously, Donald, you're correct. Amile will be missed tremendously in Durham. He was a guy who was beginning to really come on as a recruiter. The consensus out there was that Amile was the guy who had been the lead recruiter on landing Isaiah Evans, who is currently the top recruit for Duke in the class of 2024. Amile was hitting the road. He was, showing up and representing Duke at AAU events and the such, and really doing a very nice job of recruiting, in addition to, Donald, as you mentioned, the stellar job that he does as a leader, as an example, as a guy who can teach and show skills. I think there's, we've the past 2 years we've seen Duke big men play really, 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 really well. You can, almost argue that the strength of the team the past couple of years has been the quality of the big men, and I'm certain that Amile Jefferson had a role in the development of Paolo Banchero and Mark Williams and Kyle Filipowski and Dereck Lively. So Amile will be missed in a number of different ways. So let's talk about what Duke does next. Jon Scheyer does not only have Amile's position open on the staff, he has 2 additional positions. The NCAA has changed the rules. College basketball teams are now allowed to have 2 additional assistants. They are assistants who will not do any recruiting, which means that, these are guys who are primarily teachers and primarily, game guys. I suspect that we'll see Mike Schrage just moving into one of these spots. His job as, I think he was special assistant to the head coach. That was the title. My bet is they just formally will title him as an assistant coach now. I think that we'll see William Avery getting one of these coaching spots. He had already joined the staff again in a lesser position when he got done graduating from Duke, which we have talked about on this podcast. And congrats again to Mr. Avery for completing his Duke degree many years after starting it. Quite an accomplishment. And I bet that he just gets elevated into probably one of these maybe non-recruiting assistant roles, but there's still going to be at least one spot available. And I think it'll be this current spot that Amile was in that Jon Scheyer is going to have to fill. Donald, any thoughts or comments on where does Duke go for an assistant coach now? I guess everybody and their brother sort of wants it to be Quinn Cook, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like if Quinn wants to come back tomorrow, he should come back yesterday. Like, that man should be involved in the Duke program as long as he wants. But just like Jay Lucas last year, I almost expect to see some candidates from outside of the Duke family, outside of the brotherhood, to be considered for this. Mainly, again, because it seems, at least in his first year, that Jon Scheyer is open to the fact that, hey, I need an outside perspective and I need a fresh perspective on the approach to the game from all angles, and even in recruiting, I want to see how everyone else is doing it so that we can make sure that we stay on top. And to do that, you can't just rely on Duke players. So while I'd love to have a Duke player in, I'm not going to be surprised if that hire comes from outside of the brotherhood. And Jon Scheyer kind of says, hey, I want to again increase the not just the exposure of Duke to everyone else, but also the perspective. And also, I feel like this is a way for Jon Scheyer to start forming his own coaching tree, which I think is going to be something that, of course, we may not feel the effects right now, but down the line, he wants to have it where this coaching tree is not just, rooted firmly by one person, that it's a Duke family tree that is rooted with several different ones.
The other interesting thing here is that I guess Mike Schrage is fairly experienced, but not a ton of time as a head coach. Chris Carrawell's the other old head on the staff who's left, right? Because Nate James isn't there anymore, and not clear that like Nate or anybody else who's kind of left and had a hard time as a head coach is thinking about coming back. We know that Steve Wojciechowski has a new assistant gig where he's going to be in the NBA, which is cool. So I do wonder at some point if Chris Carrawell is interested in taking over a program, and that'll even add another opportunity here for Jon Scheyer. I feel like on that topic, Duke has done a pretty good job of bringing in young guys as assistant coaches. Obviously having Rachel Baker there to handle all the player name, image, and likeness stuff has been really great. And so I feel like, on a lot of benches, like if you talked about the Coach K bench a few years ago, sort of pre-Jon Scheyer, the thing they were looking for was someone who was a little younger to connect with the current players. I don't think Duke needs that at the moment. So if there was anything I was looking for in an assistant, whether it was a Duke guy or not a Duke guy, I'd be looking for a little bit more experience, somebody who's going to bring fresh sort of X's and O's perspective, as well as a bit of wisdom to this program, because it does feel like we've drained a bit of the wisdom out the last couple of years, which is totally fine. I sort of tend to think that the younger guys have a pretty good handle on this. People seem fairly confident that Jon Scheyer has a handle on it, and he's only 35. So that would be the one place I'd be looking, and echoing Donald's point, the point that I've made a number of times about the coaching staff here, that I'm very glad that Jon Scheyer is open to looking elsewhere than the Duke family tree. Not that there aren't tons of talented guys out there like Quinn Cook who might make sense on this bench, but there are lots of other guys, Jay Lucas being a perfect example of that Duke has already brought in, who seem to be bringing fresh perspectives and new ideas to the program. And I feel like all that can do is help.
All right, gentlemen, time for the last topic. We will take this one very, very quickly. The FIBA World Cup is coming up this fall. Team USA has been announced, with the exception there's still one more spot to be filled on the USA roster. But the significant news from a Duke standpoint is Paolo Banchero has been named to the USA roster for the FIBA World Cup. This was a little bit of a surprise, because everyone expected Paolo had played some of his younger FIBA international basketball for Italy. His father is of Italian descent, and Paolo was eligible to play for Italy, and that's what he had done up until now. And now he has switched and he has essentially declared himself an American for good. I believe. I'm not certain of all the FIBA rules, but I believe that this means that Paolo Banchero cannot switch back to Italy now. He must stay a member of Team USA, whether he makes Olympic teams or not. I think there's certainly a chance he'll make an Olympic team at some point. But and by the way, it's worth noting that Brandon Ingram is also on the FIBA World Cup team for Team USA. It's a really interesting roster mix of guys who are somewhat experienced in the NBA, guys like Brandon Ingram, guys like Jalen Brunson, and then a bunch of younger guys. Walker Kessler's on the team. Mikal Bridges, who we mentioned earlier, is on the team. Austin Reeves from the LA Lakers is on that team. Tyrese Halliburton, maybe the best young point guard in the NBA. Anthony Edwards, who I think probably is going to be a starter on that team. It's a really interesting roster. But guys, any reaction to Paolo becoming a American, so to speak?
Well, Jason, I should note that I think the second he steps on a court in a FIBA World Cup or an Olympics, it's over. Like, he can't switch back. So that's the rule you're referring to. But this was something that you mentioned, it was a surprise. It was actually kind of a shock, because I think as early as February, as recently as February, he had mentioned that he would be playing for Team Italy in the World Cup this summer. And that news that he is switching his allegiance, so to speak, to the United States and representing the United States, I think is a testament to the type of season that he had, which was incredible, an incredible season. And the fact that before, he was probably thinking, there's so many guys that they could call in. There's no way they're going to call me Italy. I could walk in and be the star from day one. But when Team USA's camp goes, hey, Paulo, we'd love to have you, he was probably like, oh, okay, well, that'll work for me. So I think it's a testament to the season that he had. And also, I think also just him and Brandon Ingram on the roster, both of them, I think, are dynamic. They bring a certain skill set that some of those younger players, Jason, that you mentioned that are on the team don't quite have, but also which translates super well to the international game. We've seen Paulo play international basketball back when he was in high school, and he terrorized people. So for him to be in a U.S. uniform, I am thrilled for that from at least from an American perspective, but really from a Duke perspective, those two guys are bringing something to the international game that I think translates well. And just like you saw kind of, Carmelo Anthony carve out his own little niche as being arguably, some people call him the greatest, basketball Olympian men's of all time. These guys have similar games that nobody in the rest of the world are going to be able to compete with. And because of that, I'm looking forward to watching them play in the FIBA World Cup this summer.
General hierarchy here is if you can play for Team USA in the Olympics, you play for Team USA in the Olympics. If you can play for anybody else in the Olympics, but you can't play for Team USA, then you do that to avoid never getting to play in the Olympics. And I think that the thought process for a guy like Paolo Banchero is maybe he is like destined to become one of the 10 or 15 best players in the NBA, which basically means, yes, you can play on the Olympic team. You pretty much have to be one of the like 25 or 30 best players to even be considered. Some of those guys obviously are not American. They definitely, Victor Wembanyama is going to be representing France in the Olympics. He won't be representing the US, for instance. So Paolo Banchero is probably looking at this and saying, is there a chance I'm going to become one of the top 30 players in the NBA? The answer now apparently appears to be yes. He's getting to represent at World Cup, and you hope that when the Olympics comes around again, that that opportunity will present itself for Paolo. And it sounds like if he's getting it now, after his rookie season, that there's plenty of time left. The upcoming Olympics, even the one after that, where he'll be in his athletic prime and most able to contribute for Team USA. I'm thrilled about this for Paolo because I feel like as cool as it is when our guys are playing for other countries, and it means that they get the spot in the Olympics if they get to play for Team USA, if they get to be Carlos Boozer or Coach K, then that's sort of the most exciting thing for us. I don't know if I still have it, but at some point I had a Carlos Boozer Team USA jersey that I was extremely proud of. So,
yeah. I think you guys are absolutely right. That, in fact, I will go so far as to say that probably Paulo's conversation with Grant Hill and the other folks in charge of USA Basketball was, hey, do you think that I can make the Olympic team at some point? And they probably said, yeah, absolutely. And he went, okay, well then, all right, I'm here. I'm not saying he was promised a spot on the Olympic team, but I think that there's probably a pretty good chance that we're going to see Paolo playing for Team USA in the Olympics fairly soon. It's worth noting, by the way, that the FIBA World Cup will be in late August. And I'm really excited. I really want to watch it because there's some teams that are very, very interesting. Donald, you were, sort of saying, these guys can do stuff that no one else in the world can do. I mean, that's kind of true, but if you look at the roster that Canada is going to be bringing to the World Cup, it is I'm not sure that the US are favorites. Canada might be the favorite. They got some, including RJ Barrett, by the way, but they've got some really, really good players in the Canadian team. The FIBA World Cup is going to be really, and France with Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama is going to be super exciting. And by the way, the best team in the world, according to FIBA, is the Spanish team. Spain is ranked number 1 in the FIBA rankings. So the World Cup could be really exciting.
It's going to be really exciting. But Jason, I think the one thing that people will get to see is kind of the dynamics between those two teams. Canada, as you mentioned, loaded with stars. Spain, loaded with stars. France are going to have, 2 great stars. I'm not sure if Wembanyama is going to be playing in that. I'm pretty sure he is. But like you also have the Slovenias, the Serbias, those type of teams, right?
Serbia, hey, any team with Nikola Jokic is a good team.
But I say to say this. But all those teams are sending their A team. The United States is not. And that's where the dynamic is going to be. Can I'm not trying to, besmirch these guys by saying that they're the B team for the United States, but this is not the best group that the United States can send. We deal with this all the time. Can this team still win the World Cup and still be, again, one of the best teams in the world, if not the best team in the world, when they're not bringing all of their A stars like LeBron's and the Steph Curry's of the world? If this is possible, the Olympics, which is next summer, it sets up for that to be a wild Olympics, because if they can do it, you have now, again, a player pool of about 30 or 35 guys for 12 spots, and all of them are going to want to be in the Olympics next fall or next summer, which is in Paris. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic that comes out of this FIBA World Cup.
I will say there have been some World Cups where the U.S. sent a team that I was like, this isn't even the B team. This is the C or the D team. I think this is not only is this the B team. There's some of these guys like Paolo who I absolutely think could compete.
Could compete
to be on quote unquote the A team. Jaren Jackson Jr. probably the best defender in the NBA right now. Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, that dude is really, really good. So there's some guys in this team that Brandon Ingram, by the way, hello. Yeah, there's some guys in this team that if you put them on the regular A team, no one would say, "What are you doing?" That guy doesn't belong. They all belong. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited for this upcoming FIBA World Cup. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. We have talked long enough. This is getting to be a long episode. That's going to do it for the latest episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup. I'm Jason Evans. Donald and Sam, thank you for being with me. Thanks to all of you for liking, subscribing. Those of you who haven't liked and subscribed yet, I'm not going to thank you. I'm just not doing it because you haven't done the one thing you need to do to make sure that you get the Duke Basketball Roundup in your feed the moment it is released. Like and subscribe. Go to Home Team. Use the coupon code DBR Podcast. We love all of you. Hey, we're going to be back very, very soon. We've got coming up for you really soon a very special interview that we've done with calling him a legend doesn't even do it justice. He is a legend among legends. That's going to be coming in your feed in the next couple days. Until then, I'm Jason. He's Donald. He's Sam. And this is the Duke Band to play us out and take us home. Yeah, do you want to do the Kentucky thing, or should we wait for it to be announced?
Yeah, I say we wait
mention that it's happening, or we can mention that it's like a rumor. I mean, it's out there. We don't know if it's finalized yet. But
I don't even know if I want to have a discussion of it. But an intern for Kentucky Sports Radio.
I'm excited that it's even potentially happening.